Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. My name is John, and I'm here, of course, with Bella. And today we're going to be discussing the transit through Gate 48, one of the most, I don't even have a word for this particular energy. It goes beyond words, and we're going to be looking at the archetype of the librarian. An interesting paradox, because the only thing a librarian has access to is piles and piles of words. I love it. This is the hexagram of water over wind, or the abyss over the gentle, which is really an incredible, incredible geometry of nature. And I just can't wait to discuss this, because the 48 are my Plutos, and it also shows up in my, interestingly, in my personality Mars. So yeah, 48 takes us from the shadow of, I'm completely out of words, Bella, take it away.
I'm pulling up your chart here because I'm like, oh, your EQ and your Pluto, your biggest transformation. There is something big going on here. And that's so cool, because this is actually the gene key that is coding the EQ. And it's funny because I was on a clubhouse last week and I was going to do an attunement on the emotional center. And I was quiet for at least a minute when I felt into it, and I got text messages on Facebook Messenger. Are you still there? I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed right now.
I just keep, I'm like feeling into the energy while I'm speaking, and my mind is like literally turning off. So here we are in the gene key 48, the shadow of inadequacy, to the city of wisdom, and the gift is resourcefulness. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but if you have not read the 64 ways on Gene Key 48, you have got to do that, or listen to it, because when I read it, it just hit me in a completely new way that I never imagined before. And essentially, the theme of that is resourcefulness. Thy name is woman. So really incredible insights about the relationship between masculine and feminine, man and woman, wisdom and knowledge. This one, I don't know how to talk about it, even to express the feelings that I'm having about it. So Bella, let's start somewhere that feels slightly more accessible than the depths of this particular one. Please share with us some qualities about the librarian, so that we can at least have a portal to begin addressing this.
Oh my God, I was already looking at your chart, but I guess I'm gonna, yeah.
I mean, you feel free, if you want to go off on a tangent, feel free. I'm happy to do that, because I mean, I'm here for that, but.
Well, we can start with the librarian, and I have your chart up so that let's start with actually the interesting graphic. So I mean, here we can see the librarian, and she's not really in her head, she's actually in her magic. And what I love about this archetype is that it's also about taste. She tastes life, she tastes magic, she tastes the wisdom of the book. And she's there to not pile up words like we were saying in the beginning, but really to go so deep so that she can actually purify through all these words, all these pages, and get the essence. And that's kind of what you're seeing here with the glitter, and what speaks to her heart, what speaks to her body, what tastes in her heart and in her body. And she wants to feel. And what I often remember Richard saying in this gene key is, it doesn't really matter if it's excruciating pain or ecstatic bliss. It's about feeling into the form. So comparing this gene key, for example, to the second gene key, there is a parallel, definitely, these feminine archetypes that are so anchored in form and that aren't afraid to embrace everything that can be felt and experienced in form.
It's such an interesting, if we look at this transits, and for those of you that have been following our recent lunar alchemy sessions, we've gone from the sensual to the perceiver, and now here we are arriving at the librarian. And the sensual is like this moment of ecstasy where pain and pleasure meet. And then the perceiver is this, like, takes that ecstasy and turns it into something almost practical within the world, an improvement of self, of conditions. And here we are almost transcending both of these moments of human consciousness experience, where all of the knowledge that we accumulate along the way just dissolves. And in fact, the entire world dissolves, because here you have the librarian with every concept, every piece of knowledge ever conceived in the universe. And she is just in the center of it, completely dissolving the entire set of knowledge into a void. And I really love looking at this gene key because of the incredible view that it gives us about the nature of fear. Because we go through all of these other gene keys and we look at all of these shadow frequencies and we're like, oh, I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, I'm afraid of all these things. And you come to the 48 and there's nothing to fear beyond fear. And even fear isn't even a thing to fear, because this librarian just absorbs it like it's the greatest possibility of consciousness available in the universe, and integrates it into the whole. Totally incredible. I love some of the comments going by. It's just like yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I also have the 29 in my life's work, so 48 and 29 together, it's like the abyss plus the gentle abyss. Because both of those are very, very similar in different ways.
I want to take a left turn. Maybe that's really dangerous, but I know you sometimes do dangerous, John. So I'll do dangerous today. So this is your chart, and this is my chart. So first of all, we can say we definitely have this electromagnetic, the 48 and the 16, so creating that whole channel of the wavelength. And then what you can see here is that we have 7 electromagnetics, which is a kind of crazy amount of electromagnetics in one chart. We also have this 9-0 relationship. And I have kind of provoking gene keys in my notes, which is my environment, which is kind of what's going to be around me, right? And you have also quite tough ones or messy ones with the 5th line projection, and then the storm, and the crisis. And I'm thinking about the 16 and the 48, and I'm thinking back to quite recently when we met. And I know that one thing that we both identify deeply with, which has come a lot up through the calls and conversations here, but I feel much more when we get to feel it into the form. And you and I both we have all the codon rings of matter, which has to do with feeling it in the body. So the 46, I have it, the 57, we both have. Then you have the 48 and you have the 18. Yes. So definitely feeling into the form is exciting. And I know we have that identification with Sacred Union. So what I know as well is that apparently that can be quite provoking for people in our environment. And all these electromagnetics cannot be hidden. It's impossible. And they can actually lead to quite a lot of emotional inadequacy in other people, because they are like, okay, these two people have never met in person. And suddenly then they meet, and there's this being that just is created out of nowhere, and there's nowhere to go. And nobody else can be part of that world. And they possibly can't even understand that world. We also have a lot of electromagnetics here in the penta, which is a very, very powerful place in having, or like a lot of definitions in the penta and the electromagnetic with the 46 and the 29 that says yes to the abyss, whatever happens in the temple, right? So this is like these are mechanics, and they are there, and you know, somehow we are here to role model that liberation and role model what it is to be human, what it is to, in a way, be hanged on the cross if we need to be hanged on the cross. And I just feel that, you know, looking at our charts together is powerful, and I definitely feel that it has a lot to do with feeling into the form, feeling into the matter, and connecting, to be more in connection than we are apart.
Yeah. This is so interesting to me because I've never actually looked at this before. And when we consider the role of this particular transit, this energy, this gene key, this archetype, and the way that it connects with the powerful that connection can be. And then you look at all of the other things that are happening between you and I in terms of simply energetic mechanics. It begins to bring, what is it that we're doing here in Lunar Alchemy, into a different kind of an awareness. I remember when we first started off, we discussed about, is it right to have this webinar format? And because all of the beautiful people that are here to share with us in this discussion, there's a certain exclusionary thing that is occurring there. And I felt an extraordinarily strong intuition that it was very, very important to set this up in this particular way. And as you're describing what's here, I can see that the mission that I received that led to us co-creating this experience together was essentially to create something that would give others the opportunity to shift out of their lunar body, shift out of the reflective nature of seeing the outer and projecting the shadow onto what is outside, and bringing everything inside into an inner shift so that the solar body can be activated and embraced. And when I look at this 48 and the role of inadequacy that it has in terms of our evolutionary process, all of these things roll together. This experience that we have embodied of separation in and of itself is one of the greatest motivators of evolution itself. The fact that we perceive separation, even in this gene key 48, there is wisdom in literally everything. And our very perception that we must acquire wisdom in and of itself is the driver that will eventually allow wisdom, paradoxically, to become realized within us. And it just brings, you know, this, everything about this kind of experience is really, it's really about shining light on this process of shifting our focus from being evolutionary beings to becoming involutionary beings. And to do that from the body, rather than constantly going, how can I improve myself? How can I do business better? How can I do relationships better? It's more like, how can I become more of my greater self? and allow that shift to transform the reality on a quantum level, rather than piecemeal picking flaws out of ourselves and trying to work with it in the outer world. Talk about a left turn. So, Bella, I feel like I feel like what you shared about our charts together, it's so much, it shares so much about what you and I experienced in Aura together. And what, you know, I only got to experience my view, my perception, my emotions of that experience. And I felt incredibly drawn to explore, to embrace, to dive to the depths of what it means to experience sacred union. And when there are people who come together and that is part of the drive, there's either going to be an opportunity for that to happen, or there is going to be essentially the reverse magnetics, where you are essentially pushed away. And I experienced the magnetizing in. And what we were able to do with it, for me, was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And I wonder if there is some perspective you can share about your experience that might bring more awareness of the feminine nature. Because for me, when you look at the 48, it essentially, if you read the 64 ways, Richard Rudd is talking about, okay, so this is totally feminine energy. This is like the woman of the feminine. So what if you're a man? And it essentially says that relationship is devotion to the feminine. And that is what I got to have a full experience of. So I'm curious to hear more about what is the experience of the feminine, to understand what is this energy field. And since you have the two as your life's work, it really, you know, essentially you and I coming together are in some ways the definition of what this 48 gene key is, of what the librarian is about.
Yeah, where to start? I'm going to, I see a few more people have jumped on, so I'm just going to reshare. And for me, the closest word or expression would be to come home, and to not come home in one particular way, because I think that the human way of coming together, it's usually in one way. Either we come together as intellectuals, or we come together as lovers, or we come together as girlfriends. And there was something that felt so overarching and also not narrowed in anything specific. And when I look at this body graph in the middle, where you are everything that is orange and I'm everything that is turquoise, we can see, I mean, first, if we look at the head and the ajna, for both of us are open, and you can see kind of these perfect ways of coming together: abstract and logic, electromagnetics, and they are perfectly like switched there. And then we have the inspiration and the rationalization, like even just there in how the conceptualization and the inspiration of what was going on could be lived, like I said, experienced in us. And then we see the connection, electromagnetic connection from the throat to the spleen, electromagnetic from the spleen to the sacral. We have here from the root to the emotional center as well. And then the tantric channel, which is that it's like, it doesn't matter. Like it felt to me that in that sacred union as well as the feminine, it's like whatever has to happen, if you have said yes to the experience, you can't stop it. And any storms and any explosion, anything can happen, because when you are faithful in a way to sacred union, there is no option in a way there, and there is no, with that channel, the 4629, there is the experience has like it has to run its course, I guess. Anything else would be to the opposite of being faithful, you know.
Yeah, so I love that you described that. There's a fierceness in the degree of embrace, and yet you began by describing the softness of what it feels like to be home.
Mhm.
And so when I look at this archetype, when I look at this gene key, there's that fierceness of embracing any fear that may arise. And not only any fear, but any sensation that might arise, because this particular gene key is so much within the body. And, you know, just in going through the contemplation of the gene keys over this essentially year and a half that we've been doing this through Lunar Alchemy, I've been getting to more and more closely experience the subtle levels of resistance that I have towards any particular experience, whether it's an experience of non-inspiration, non-attraction, non-energetic, you know, something where I feel less than the way that I want to feel, which is essentially to feel inadequate.
Mhm.
And not even from the standpoint of a judgmental, oh, you don't deserve this. Like, let's take worthiness out of inadequacy entirely and look at what does it mean to be the full embodiment of a human being. And notice all of the ways in which we don't feel adequate to have that experience, because we don't have enough money, we don't have enough love, we don't have enough pleasure, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough inspiration, we don't have enough.
It's interesting because going back to being able to stay home, I'm wondering still with worthiness, the ego center, the 21 and the ego center, because I remember that feeling, kind of seeing still what's going on in the world and the inadequacy that's going on in the world, and finding that sweetness of sacred union, that subtlety of sacred union, and feeling, am I allowed to stay home? Although everything is moving around and there is such a deep, like you say, such a deep resting in the form, like a heaviness, a beautiful heaviness in that. And still it's almost like you're called out. And I believe that those keys in Libra, because it's air and it is about the fear of tomorrow, it is about the fear of failure, it is about the fear of like the corruption that's there. So you hear all that in Libra and you feel so deeply grounded home. And then the question whether it has to do with worthiness or not becomes, am I allowed to stay home?
I absolutely love and adore that the antidote to fear is not courage, but gentleness.
That's my vocation. Yay. That's the 57, right? That's the antidote to the core wound, which, because this 57 is coding for, and that's Richard Rudd's core wound. So that's what he has built his whole transmission on. And it's profound.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I want to just bring in a little bit the hexagram and talk about the elements. we have water over wind, but it's the abyss over the gentle. And Bella, if you want to bring up the braid, I'd love to just look at it. In the I Ching, it's the well. And when it's described in the I Ching, it describes how the movements of human society always change, but the form of the well never does. There's always a need for a well to be able to connect to what allows life to take place, the breath of life beneath the water. And when we look at the gentle in the ancient Chinese system, it was sometimes also discussed as wood. And that is how you come up with the well, because the wood is just the structures of the well that allows the clay pot to go down and bring up the pot of water. And we see this also in nature, in the roots of plants. The roots of the plants are the wood, and they draw up from the earth the life force, the water that has permeated the soil. And with it, it creates flowering, fruiting. It's like this right here is at the absolute meeting of evolution and involution. It's at the absolute meeting of human potential as a form of consciousness. So clarity is found at the bottom of the well. So no matter what you're looking at, no matter how dark, no matter how deep, no matter how unknown, no matter how scary, there is clarity at the bottom. And if you are willing to dive into the well, or to see at least what's in it, it feels as if you are going after life, and therefore life will support you in that process. So Bella, I don't know if you wanted to talk about the braid at all, but I just wanted to kind of look at this energy, because, you know, the breath of life beneath the water, that's another paradox. We don't even see that in nature. How does that even show up? So.
Yeah, I feel almost called to go back to what sacred union is, in a way, and what the 48 is. The 48 has to do with it's a purification itself, because we are purifying away the fears or the misunderstandings. And I feel that part of what you experience, what we experience as well, had to do with going so deep so that all the misunderstandings could evaporate. Mm. And definitely that takes the abyss, which is one of the elements. And it also takes to kind of feel into everything that's there with the 57. I do want to say that sacred union doesn't have to be sexual, because sacred union has to be with you, finding the wholeness in you and purifying all the misunderstandings that wholeness doesn't exist within, that the 21 and the 48, feminine and masculine, don't exist inside. And when they do, all that fragmentation goes out, and it's only the essence, the purified essence, that's there. And I feel that we also had the opportunity as 6 lines in both part of our incarnation cross, but more than anything in our attraction sphere. When you have a 6 line in the attraction sphere, it's actually often cellularly and in intent that you experience sexuality. So without any form of physical sexuality, you can embrace, experience sacred union in yourself, and with that also in the other. And I also want to say that this is definitely walking the line. And it's, for me, it's not walking the line of evolution. It's definitely walking the line of involution.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that in, because I think when we begin to talk about these experiences of possibility that can happen within a human being, and we share about it with other people, there's a certain amount of like, well, how does this happen? I need to know. I need to know how to create sacred union. And what I got to discover is that you cannot know how to do it. You can only do it. And what I got to experience for myself was pure devotion to the feminine. And when that happened for me, it shifted me into absolute freedom from the other. I was able to experience myself as the other. I was able to experience the other as myself. And I feel as if that is one of the incredible paradoxes of this particular energy of the 48, that we can't receive wisdom or realize wisdom without going through a process of acquiring all of the knowledge that we possibly can, reading all the books. Why do we read Gene Keys and Human Design and the I Ching and whatever other books we're reading? We're acquiring knowledge, and at some point along that path, life is going to give us an opportunity to embrace wisdom, but only if we're willing to step into that darkness. And that doesn't even mean, the darkness doesn't even have to be something that feels evil or dangerous or fearful. It just has to be outside the realm of the light of our knowledge. The darkness is just absence of light. That's it. We have to be willing to take that plunge, the step into the unknown, indeed.
Yeah, I love what you say there too. And I believe that the 48, again, it doesn't have a preference. It doesn't say, oh, I want ecstatic bliss. It wants to feel. And the purity, again, of that, of saying, I want to feel deeply. And the humbleness of the 48 of saying, I want to feel, in a way, I take whatever life, medicine, my lover, the beloved serves me. Like that's what I'm surrendering to. Like in that, there is, for me, the beauty of that is just, it's very hard to describe with words again, but it's something that like I feel in my body as I'm saying it, because I feel like it's a quality as human beings that we have forgotten, even because there is a kind of entitlement of what we should go after. And maybe in this country, we should go after being happy, is something that I don't feel that much from where I come from. But then there's this entitlement to be happy. But what if it is to feel the richness of life, whatever it is, and definitely, yeah, I had a quite challenging weekend and I was very strong. I felt through it in terms of inner strength, and that 38, 39, I guess. And then I suddenly was writing about it and got a response like in real time, as the generator. And then when I was seeing in what I was going through, suddenly all the emotions welled up and I was able to just cry. And suddenly it was such a release because I got to feel it. And of course it wasn't strong and like warrior wise anymore, but it was actually much more powerful because I got to feel into the depth of that form and in all the places where it actually was influencing me, affecting me, hurting. And I feel that sometimes we are not doing ourselves any good by having a preference, because maybe the complete opposite is really what's going to open us up and purify us even more and have that wisdom come through the vessel, come through the well.
Yeah, when what you're talking about, Bella, it really makes me think of that whole channel of the 48 to the 16, and where it talks about just having the hanging 48. You're essentially destined to have this incredible depth and experience the frustration of not being able or capable of bringing it out to share, to deliver, until that 16 is present. And what you were sharing about was as if from the other side, the 16 seeking that depth of experience that would allow for, just the feeling to actually fully come through. I've got all the ways to express it, but I'm not feeling it yet. Where's the depth? And I feel as if that just really brings into awareness, like, what does it mean when we have a hanging gate? And how does that influence our inner drive, what we seek in the world? And to understand that there is some sort of energy that is constantly seeking for that wholeness through our system. And that we're only satisfied when that wholeness comes through. And how, when we have a hanging gate, can we experience wholeness unless we have relationship? Whether it's to another human being or to things in our environment, whatever it is, how can we embrace that wholeness and realize that everything is about relationship? And in that realization, be able to experience the fulfillment of whatever it is that we are seeking. That freedom from separation. In some ways, I wonder if that speaks about the 55 and what the freedom is really about. In this country, in the United States, we have all these ideas about freedom and what it means and what the infringement of freedom means. But when I think about it from the 48, it's like there's no such thing as infringement. There's no possibility that another human being could do a single thing that could possibly generate separation, that could create separation that I don't have some kind of experience or that isn't mine to do something with.
Well, I feel back to those hanging gates and our evolution and our awareness and our embodiment. As more and more of us are able to have more sovereignty and become more stable in the gift frequency, which is the human pathway, in those hanging gates, and we meet somebody else who can be more embodied, stable in a higher frequency as well, that's when we are going to start to have those experiences of sacred union and of synergy and of having access with the other, through the connection to something that we can't completely experience ourselves. So definitely I feel that all of us to be curious about those relationships. And I am very intense, and I feel now that I've met you, John, you're also a very intense being. And for us, possibly when we have 9, 0, and 7 electromagnetics, that's when we're like, wow, you know. And other people might be like, if it's 1, then they have that one theme that they have together that they can really investigate together. For example, we don't have first lines in our profiles, for example. And definitely it can be way too intense. In all of my relationships that are close to me, I have 6 or more electromagnetics. It's just the way that I'm attracted to connect and to express. And I would be curious for all of us, like when you have people that you know their birth data, look how many electromagnetics, what are the connections that feel good for you? And then again, it's the frequency bands. Of course, if that person for some reason or you have a really tough time and period, then maybe some of those themes are going to be lived out in lower frequency. But definitely as exploration, how does it feel? How do the electromagnetics feel? How do they feel in the shadow? How do they feel in the gift? And maybe even in the shadow, I would say there is such a beautiful opportunity, because when you have a whole theme and not just half of it, the breakthrough is so much closer in the whole theme than when you only have a hanging gate, like you're saying, this kind of seeking for what's on the other side.
Yeah. It really brings into my awareness the differences between how we meet people across great distances, across the internet, for instance. For everyone in our group who are either following Lunar Alchemy or exploring Unlock Your Design or just Gene Keys, human design, whatever it is, the people that we connect with through social media, the difference between that experience and the experience that we can have in aura with another person. And to me, the 48 brings this just like almost hard to imagine degree of acceptance around whatever comes, whatever is available, whatever is present. Fear, bliss, pain, sorrow, joy, all of it, just like taking it all in and just completely just absorbing the totality of it. I mean, this one starts, like whipping off into all these other gene keys that have these qualities, about this. But it's like, oh man, the 48 is the void. It turns you into a black hole. And I mean, if there's anything scary in the universe, it's a black hole, because it's just, you're just completely sucked in by it. And it makes me think that being in the presence of another person to explore all that's available there, it really does bring our inner contemplations, our inner possibilities into a new realm that we couldn't experience any other way. I love these reactions to the black hole going on.
God, the
Some
wonderment of
like,
the black hole is where I love to picnic.
yeah, but then for other people, it's like, yeah, that doesn't sound good. I mean, when I started looking at, like there's this yogic concept of moksha, where you actually develop your being to such a degree that you recognize that there is literally zero difference between all that is and yourself. And in that moment that happens, there is no longer any possibility for individuation. You are just, there was never any you. There never will be a you again. It's just completely gone. Any sense of self, nothing. And when I came across that concept, I was like, oh my God, yoga is terrifying. Like, is that what I'm really after? Annihilating myself? That was kind of the perspective that I took when I came across that. But, whoosh. I love that there are other people out there who like to have picnics in black holes. I mean, that's powerful stuff. Bella, anything else you'd like to share today about this incredible energy?
I mean, we still have a few weeks on the wheel to feel into matter and really purifying matter so that the light can crack through and we can see each other in more transparency and feel each other in more intimacy. That for me feels so alive and so exciting, and a part of us might be scared for that, but like even in saying that, it seems such a like a necessary blockage to be scared, because it's so amazing what's if we go there anyway, even if it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, next week we'll have the 57, which will close out the codon ring of matter. And so for those of you that are looking at your Venus sequence, EQ, IQ, we're just about to complete that process, SQ, and of course the core wound. We'll get to finish that off next week. And I want to thank all of you for being present, for being, the chat was like popcorn today. It was just like flowing, and then it would get quiet, and then it would start blazing up again. It was pretty awesome to watch. And I just want to thank all of you for your presence. And definitely, Bella, thank you for being willing to take a risk.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yes, indeed. And just so satisfying. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your transit. For our Lunar Alchemy members, we're going to be looking at, of course, a water transmission, but not like one we've done before. Most of the water transmissions have been about memory, and this one is just about absorption. So I'm really excited for this one. If any of you noticed, I've been drinking water like I'm in the middle of the desert. I drank a whole one of these right before I got on because I'm so thirsty today. Thank you for the well wishes, and sending loving presents to all of you from my heart to yours. I'll see you very, very soon. Bye for now.